Welcome to Discovering. Tonight we visit the DNR Fish Shop.
Our survey on Gogebic from this spring was pretty hard on our nets this year. Some of them get chewed up by muskrats, or turtles get into them or tear them up. They get hit by boaters.
Plus, I chat with Chad Stewart of the DNR Wildlife Division about the results of the online harvest report from the 2022 deer season. So sit back and relax. It's Monday night and it's time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Spring through fall, the Michigan DNR collects all sorts of data from the fish populations throughout the Great Lakes and inland lakes and streams. Last spring, I had the chance to see firsthand how the DNR fishery techs conduct their walleye surveys on Lake Gogebic and how they collect that data and samples. It's during the winter months that they analyze those samples and compile all the data from the year. So I recently visited the fish shop, the headquarters for the DNR fishery techs in the western UP, to see how they age the fish and check out what else the techs do when they're not out on the water.
So right now we're in Crystal Falls, Michigan. This is our fisheries technician shop. This is where we keep our boats, motors, trailers, and all the equipment that we use to do our field work. Our area that we do our field work is the entire western UP. That's our primary area. We work in 2 watersheds, work with 3 different habitat biologists, 2 different unit supervisors. We've got people that do creel work. They're out there asking you how you did fishing. Did you catch anything? What were you fishing for? You'll see them at some of our access sites.
Mark oversees 4 fishery techs that work out of this office.
They're the guys out in the boat collecting the data, lifting the nets. They're shocking at night. You might see something that looks like a spaceship on the lake. It's our boom shocker. It's got a lot of lights on it. We're out there collecting data to make well-informed fish management decisions involving stocking, regulation, and such. So all that's conducted right here from this office in Crystal Falls for the western UP. And then in the winter, like you've seen, we put it into the computers. We're analyzing the age and growth.
This is where we actually age the fish and take the data that we collected from the survey. We'll actually figure out their ages and how well they're growing, and use this information to kind of come up with whatever question that we have on a particular lake, Lake Gogebic. What is the walleye population? That's kind of the question, what we're asking. We could use aging data for other lakes, trout lakes, whether the trout are surviving, how old are the trout getting after we stock them, in the fall. Are they living to the next fall? Are they living multiple falls or multiple years? So we want to age our fish just to find that out. When we're out on a survey, Lake Gogebic, like this last spring, we take the dorsal spine from the fish and we clip it off. We take like 4 to 5 fin rays from the dorsal spine, which is the spine on the back. What I do is I take the spine and I'll actually cut a disc off of it. And then what I'll do with the spine here is I'll actually look at it under a microscope here. And what we're doing is I'm counting annuli. Walleye, basically what they do is they will grow during the spring through the fall, and then in the winter their growth will slow down. At that period they'll produce a ring in their spine corresponding to the winter called an annuli. And so what you do is you count the rings in that spine and you could figure out how old the fish is. Just similar to counting like the tree rings on like a stump. It's very similar. So I'll cut the section and then I'll actually look at it under the microscope. This is the image what we see when we look through the microscope. So if this is a walleye, which it is, I would count from the middle right here. So this would be the first year right here. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A 9-year-old walleye. This would be the last annuli that they're laying down, which we collected this in the spring. So this would be the winter period right here. Depends on the lake, but the average is 3 to 4 years to reach 15 inches. If the lake has the adequate forage. But we have a lot of lakes in the UP where we have slower growing walleye because we don't have the adequate forage. And so they'll be 1 to 2 inches below state average. A 26-inch walleye might be 10 years old on Lake Michigan, where it would be almost 20 years old on Lake Gogebic. So just to give an example of how different they grow in different lakes. Lake Michigan has a lot more forage, Lake Gogebic not so much. Here's a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old walleye. And see how much distance there is between the annuli here compared to this one here? It's growing really well here. So this fish is growing fast, it's getting longer. This one's an older fish, but it didn't have quite the growth. All our age and growth data right here in a spreadsheet, and it shows that the average length for walleye in Lake Gogebic from this last survey, they're growing negative 2.3 inches below state average. So they are slow growing like they have been in previous surveys. And the average length of walleye that we did get in our nets is 11.8 inches long. In a typical year in the winter, I'll age 3,000 to 5,000 spines or fish samples throughout the winter based on the number of lakes or streams and stuff that we survey. As far as numbers of lakes too, if you want to know how many lakes we do roughly, this last field season we surveyed over 50 lakes in this like western UP. So, and then over 13 rivers. We're basically, as fisheries technicians, we're the hands and feet of the biologists, so we do a lot of the work to get their information that they're asking for us to collect.
Other than compiling all their data on time, what else do the fisheries techs do during the winter? Those nets you saw them capture the walleye in, well, those are in need of repair.
So yeah, our aging has to be in by February 1, our data has to be in by January 1, so that kind of takes priority. Somehow this year we got ahead of schedule, which is nice, so all that stuff's actually done already. So we got a head start on our net repair for the season. My name is Brad Shuka. I started with Michigan DNR in 2017, and I'm a fisheries technician. I am fixing holes in fyke nets. We've got probably between all 3 types of net we use, we've probably got about 175 nets a year that we have to get through repairing between large fyke nets, status and trends fyke nets, trap nets, gill nets, walleye pond nets, and we have to at least take a look at pretty much all of them over the course of the winter. Some get thrown out because they're beyond repair. Some you got to weld the frames up. Some you just got to patch holes. Some take you 20 minutes. I've been on this one for something like 2.5 days. So it really just varies net to net how much work they actually need and what kind of repair they're going to need. First thing is kind of assess where is the hole. Is it in a spot that's going to be an easy repair? Do you have to, like I did here, I had to cut a flap open in the net to even get to the part that I had to fix, and I'm going to have to fix my net after I fixed my net. If it's on one of these seams or like here, it's a little bit more complicated to repair. Figuring out how to trim the hole out to, like I'm doing in this case, making new mesh right in that hole. It's kind of a puzzle. You stare at it for a while and figure out where to cut and where not to cut to make it work. Sometimes you can see like this one or this one, just depending on where that hole is located in the net or how big it is. You might just cut a square out and just sew a new patch in. Everyone's a little different. Like I said, it's kind of a puzzle. I'm the oddball of the group. I kind of enjoy it.
Each of these techs are also part of committees.
A handful of us are on some various statewide projects, whether it's trout committee, walleye committee, a sockeye committee, which is like our pike and muskie team. some of our basin teams. So we've got meetings and stuff like that throughout the winter that we attend. We try to schedule that stuff during everybody's slower season this time of year. Muskrats are not always my friend. No. And they really like to chew in the most complicated areas to fix. They can't ever do it somewhere easy. They only make holes where it's kind of a pain to get to them. Because if you take good care of these nets and you fix them right and you make sure they're in a good state of repair, they'll last a long time. A lot of these nets are older than I am. You know, most of them are 30 plus years old. Pretty serious investment to get new ones. So we try to make the most out of them, get the best lifespan we can out of them. The knots itself are pretty simple. The idea is pretty simple. Actually doing it and getting your loops the right sizes so your meshes are the right size and they're consistent is a little bit more complicated. It takes a lot of practice. And as you go, every time you're doing it, you tie a new knot and you kind of just make a series of loops. And as you go, each loop just becomes the next tie point for your next row of mesh you build. Knot we use is a sheet bend. And then depending on if you're going left to right or right to left, you tie them the opposite direction from each other. Yeah, it's just miles and miles and miles of twine and the same knot over and over and over and over again. And I'm the oddball that enjoys it for some reason.
My name's Kyle Urban, obviously a fisheries technician as well as Brad there. I am fixing the lead of a fyke net. As you can see, it's taken off the float line here. So just some simple knots. 3 half hitches together, 1 in one direction, 2 in the other, and then I have to count how many per, and then they're roughly 1 needle length. You can actually see where the previous one was here, but I lost count, so I'm gonna have to count it again.
I don't know about you, but I learned a few new terms today.
Fyke. F-Y-K-E, fyke. But yeah, then I just tighten it up, and then I'll do a couple half hitches. So there's 1 half hitch going over the top. The next half hitch I will go underneath. And I'll cinch that down, and then I do 1 more half hitch going underneath. Make sure that's nice and neat. And then just for a little bit of insurance, oop, I'm running out of line. I'll go around the main line here and just tie a quick knot. And that's so if this line here were to break, this doesn't come undone and then the rest stays intact. As you can see here how this one's cut, but it's still tied together. But yeah, this is a couple months worth of work. Like Brad said, you can kind of see the stacks behind us here, and we got 2 piles here done. We got a pile behind you there that is done and that we're working on, and you can see all the rest of them that we're still needing to get to. Finish that up, but now I have a hole right here that I have to fix. But yeah, what I'm doing here is gonna be tying mesh, which I can do, but sometimes it looks sloppy and sometimes it looks like Brad did it. I replaced the lead on this because the previous lead had a dock this spring. The owner set it on top of it, so we had to cut it just to get out, so it happens. But we had one on Gogebic this year that the next day when we picked it up after it was gone through a whole rough day of weather, it was folded around a boulder on shore and the mesh on the entire frame was completely ripped off. So that one is no longer in use.
That bump board Kyle was measuring fish on last spring, they build those in-house.
My name's Tyler Walls. I'm a fisheries technician for Michigan DNR. I do most of the repair and building work, I guess, fabricating, making our fish boards and our jigger boards for setting gill nets under the ice and wrenching on the boats.
You have to realize how important it is to have our equipment in operating order that's efficient. One down day, you've got 4 people's wages. You've got a whole loss of a day, and it can disrupt a survey and costs us thousands of dollars just because a boat trailer threw a wheel bearing or something like that. So it's important that everything, goes as well as possible during the summertime and the spring.
From aging fish to repairing nets to building survey equipment and repairing boats, there seems to be no shortage of work inside the fish shop. I'm sure we will see these techs again for a survey or stocking story in the future. Some of the results of the mandatory deer harvest reporting that began last year are out, so I chatted with Chad Stewart of the DNR Wildlife Division about it. It was over Zoom, so please forgive the quality.
I think this is going to be really good data. This is really going to be good information, but one of the things we have to do yet is what I'm calling like calibrating it. We know what the numbers are, but this is the first year of these numbers, and we don't necessarily know how they relate to previous year's estimates. For the UP, I'm looking at 22,784 deer reported. Obviously, that's not going to be the entirety of the harvest, and I've talked with some individuals that that said, "Wow, this is the lowest harvest the UP's ever had." And it's important to point out that this isn't representative of the actual harvest. This is the reported harvest because we're still learning what compliance rates are. What percentage of individuals haven't reported. So that number ultimately is going to be a lot higher. Where it lands, I don't know. It'll probably be in the high 20s, maybe even low 30s. I don't know where our compliance rates are going to fall. It's my guess or my gut tells me it's probably going to be in that 70 to 75% range, which basically means increase your estimate by 25 or 30%. And, if you're looking at, 22,000, you're probably looking at another 5,000 to 6,000 deer on top of that. And that's pretty consistent with where we were last year. If that number is accurate and this season is pretty consistent with previous seasons, then, you're looking at a compliance rate of close to about 3 out of every 4 deer, which for the first year that we're going through this is pretty great, honestly. So the hunters should be commended for their picking up of this. But we've got more data now than we've ever had before. Like we've got daily harvest figures. We've got the connection between the harvest and the license type, which again we've never had before. We've got finer scale harvest data than we've ever had before, and I know that was controversial for a lot of hunters as well. That requirement to sort of drop a pin where your harvest was, and certainly we got some weird locations. Like we had some that were dropped on the North Pole or in the middle of Lake Superior, but I think a majority of the people put it and seemed to put it in a reasonable location that at least matched up with their county of harvest. So if we can kind of confirm what that looks like, we'll be able to manage deer at a much smaller scale than we've ever been able to do before. So we'll be able to see trends that might be occurring in part of the county that might be masked in other parts of a county or management unit. And we can try to account for that, in the future with whether it's quotas or season availability or analyst opportunities or whatever. The thing that was striking to me was now we have the ability to estimate, harvest or at least see what the reported harvest is on a day-by-day basis. And what's fascinating is that we had over 45,000 deer reported on opening day taken. Opening day was a Tuesday, and Tuesdays aren't really ones you think of as your ideal opening date for firearm season, but we had 45,000 deer reported that opening day. The online harvest reporting program right now does still have limitations in that we're only gathering information from successful hunters. Unsuccessful hunters are not required to report their time or their efforts or anything through that program. And that's why we are continuing to send out surveys for at least the next couple years. And we just had one hit Hunter's mailbox last week. And that is the type of information that helps us estimate success rates. Those are also really good management pieces that we need to understand the whole picture for deer management. We certainly learned a lot. We think it performed well, but it's not going to stop us from sort of critically evaluating, things and trying to improve it for next year.
So if you get that survey, take a moment to fill it out. And if you didn't, you can go online to michigan.gov/deer and fill out an online survey. Chad and I talked for roughly 30 minutes, so if you'd like to see the full interview, I have that right now on my website, discovertheup.com. That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.